The silence in our Oak Creek home wasn't the kind of quiet you find in a library or a peaceful forest. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that settles over the Illinois plains right before a massive supercell tears through the cornfields. I sat at the mahogany dining table, the one we'd picked out together in a boutique shop in Chicago 5 years ago, and watched Maya. She was glowing, but the light wasn't coming from me. It was the bluish tint of her smartphone screen, reflecting in eyes that used to look at me with something resembling devotion. Now those eyes were distant, occupied by a world I no longer inhabited. I watched her thumb move across the glass, her expression softening into a small private smile. A smile I hadn't received in over 3 years. I felt a cold, hollow sensation in my chest. I knew. Me, I had known for months. It started with the late nights at the firm and ended with the lingering scent of expensive wood smoke cologne on her hair. A scent that definitely didn't belong to my collection. But sitting there, watching her thumb through her messages while our dinner went cold, I felt a strange, icy calm. The heartbreak had already come and gone. Now only the strategy remained. I was an architect by trade. I knew that when a foundation is cracked beyond repair, you don't try to patch it, you prepare for a controlled demolition. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Here on Family Secrets and Revenge, we peel back the layers of the suburban dream to see what's rotting underneath. Maya finally looked up, her expression shifting instantly into a mask of professional exhaustion. It was a practiced transition, one she had perfected over the last 6 months of our crumbling marriage. "Sorry, Caleb," she said, her voice smooth but lacking any real warmth. "The Sterling merger is just, it's a monster. I'm going to have to pull another all-nighter at the office tomorrow. Julian wants the final brief on his desk by Friday morning, and the team is struggling to keep up with the compliance metrics." Julian. The name felt like a piece of jagged glass under my tongue. Julian Vance was the lead consultant who had joined her firm last spring. He was 32, drove a car that cost more than our first house, and apparently had a penchant for working late in five-star hotel lounges. I had seen him once at a company gala. He was the kind of man who took up too much space in a room, radiating an unearned confidence that Maya seemed to find intoxicating. "The Sterling merger," I repeated, my voice steady, betraying none of the fire burning in my gut. I took a slow sip of my water, watching her over the rim of the glass. "That's been going on for a long time, hasn't it? Nearly 7 months of all-nighters. You must be exhausted, Maya. It's a wonder you haven't collapsed from the sheer weight of it all." She bristled, her eyes flashing with a momentary defensiveness. "I am exhausted, Caleb. I'm doing this for us, for our future. I just wish you were a little more supportive instead of sitting there like a statue, but judging me for having a career that demands more than yours does." The next afternoon, I didn't go to my architectural firm in downtown Chicago. Instead, I drove 30 minutes south to a nondescript office building in Naperville to meet a man named Elias Thorne. Elias was a retired detective who specialized in domestic verification. In other words, he caught liars for a living. The office smelled of stale coffee and old paper, a stark contrast to the sterile, modern lines of my own workspace. Elias didn't waste time with small talk. He just slid a thick manila envelope across the scarred wooden desk. Inside were high-resolution photos taken at a boutique bistro in Evanston. There was Maya, laughing, really laughing, with Julian Vance. Their hands were intertwined on the table next to a bottle of vintage Bordeaux. Another set of photos showed them entering a luxury apartment complex near the lakefront at 2 a.m. "They've been renting that unit under a corporate alias for 3 months, Elias said, his voice a low gravelly rumble. "I've got the logs, the GPS tracking from her vehicle, and a few audio snippets from the restaurant. It's not just a fling, Caleb. They're planning something. I saw them looking at real estate brochures for the West Coast. She's not just leaving you, she's preparing to disappear." I walked out of that office into the biting Chicago wind, the envelope tucked under my arm like a death warrant. My mind was racing, but not with the frantic energy of grief. I was thinking about the finances, our house, the offshore investments, or Saksharar, the joint accounts. Maya had always handled the day-to-day, while I focused on the big picture design of our lives. I realized then that I hadn't just been a husband. I had been a silent partner in my own replacement, funding a lifestyle that was being used to audition my successor. I spent the rest of the day at my lawyer's office, a high-rise with a view of the gray, churning waters of Lake Michigan. Sarah, an old friend from my university days, looked through the evidence with a grim, professional expression. "This is messy, Caleb. She's been moving small amounts, increments of $4,900 to avoid bank flags, into a shell account for a year. But in Illinois, we have ways to handle this, especially since you have an ironclad prenuptial agreement regarding infidelity and asset protection. We can freeze her out before she even realizes the locks have changed." Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Have you ever looked at someone you loved and realized you didn't recognize them at all? When I got home that evening, the house smelled like expensive jasmine candles. Maya had ordered high-end Thai food and was plating it on our wedding china, as if we were a normal, happy couple celebrating an anniversary. She was wearing a new dress, silk, emerald green, the kind of things she'd usually save for a high-stakes gala or a night out with Julian. "You're home late," she said, her tone slightly accusatory, the classic tactic of a guilty mind. "I was starting to think you were the one having an affair. Or maybe you just got lost in a blueprint again?" She laughed, a sharp metallic sound that set my teeth on edge. "Just work, Maya. Just work," I said, setting my briefcase down with a deliberate click. I watched her move around the kitchen, her movements fluid and confident. She was a master of the charade. "You've been so distant lately, Caleb. Honestly, it's making me feel a bit neglected. Julian was saying today that a woman like me deserves a man who is present, you know? Not someone who just stares at blueprints all day and forgets to ask how my day was." She looked at me, her eyes searching for a reaction, a spark of jealousy she could use to justify her own betrayals. "Is that what Julian thinks?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion, as flat as a desert floor. I walked toward her, and for a second, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. The primal instinct of a predator realizing the prey has stopped running. But I just reached past her for a glass of wine, my hand steady. "He sounds like he has a lot of opinions on our marriage for someone who is just a lead consultant." She bristled, her posture stiffening. "He's just observant, unlike you. Sometimes I wonder if you even care what I do when I'm out. Are you even capable of feeling jealous, or are you just that bored with me? Maybe that's why I have to seek stimulation elsewhere. Intellectually speaking, of course." I looked her dead in the eye. I could see the reflection of the man I used to be in her pupils. The man who would have apologized, who would have begged for her attention, who would have bought her jewelry to win back her smile. But that man was dead. It's buried under the weight of the manila envelope in my car. "I'm not bored, Maya," I said softly, the words hanging in the air like a threat. "I'm just observing, too. You'd be surprised what you see when you finally stop looking through rose-colored glasses." Over the next week, I began the digital extraction. I knew Maya used a shared cloud drive for her work files, but she was sloppy, arrogant in her belief that I was too technologically challenged to look deeper. I found a hidden folder encrypted with a password that was Julian's birthday. Inside was Project California. It wasn't just a folder, it was a manifesto of betrayal. There were floor plans for a house in Malibu, flight itineraries for two, and a spreadsheet detailing how she intended to liquidate our joint investment portfolio. She had been documenting my emotional coldness in a digital diary, preparing a narrative for a divorce court that painted me as a neglectful, borderline abusive husband. She wasn't just cheating, she was preparing to rob me blind and start a new life on the West Coast using my hard-earned capital as her seed money. I sat in my study late that night, the glow of the monitor the only light in the room, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. I had enough evidence to ruin her career. I had enough to ensure she walked away with nothing but the clothes on her back and a mountain of legal fees. But a part of me, the part that remembered her holding my hand at my father's funeral, the part that remembered our honeymoon in Tuscany, hesitated. Was I becoming the monster she claimed I was? Tell me, if you were in Caleb's shoes, so standing in a silent house reading messages that mocked your very existence, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments. Personalize this for me. If you found out your partner was planning a Project California behind your back, would you burn it all down? Or would you try to find a way to leave with your dignity intact? The dinner was excruciating. Martha was talking about the garden, and Bill was asking me about the new library design I was working on. Maya sat there, her leg bouncing under the table, her phone buzzing incessantly in her lap. She was checking the time, probably counting the minutes until she could meet Julian at their secret apartment. Maya, honey, put that phone away, Martha chided gently. You're with family. Caleb went to all this trouble to make a nice meal. I have to check this, Mom. It's the Sterling merger. Millions of dollars are on the line. Maya snapped, her voice high and tight. Actually, I interrupted, wiping my mouth with a napkin and standing up. The Sterling merger can wait, because I think now is the perfect time for the real surprise of the evening. I've prepared a little presentation for all of you. I stood up and walked to the sideboard, picking up 4 large, elegant envelopes I had professionally printed that afternoon. I handed one to Martha, one to Bill, and one to Maya. My heart was thumping, but my hands were as still as stone. What is this, Caleb? A vacation brochure? Bill asked, looking confused as he fumbled for his reading glasses. It's a portfolio of Maya's recent work, I said, my voice projecting with the authority of a man who had already won. Yet I wanted you to see just how dedicated she's been to her new ventures, especially the ones that involve real estate in Malibu and boutique hotels in Evanston. Maya opened her envelope. The color didn't just drain from her face, it vanished, leaving her looking like a ghost in an emerald dress. Inside were the photos from the bistro, the hotel logs, and the printouts of the Project California spreadsheet. The room went silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I watched as Bill's eyes scanned the photos of his daughter kissing another man. I watched Martha's hand go to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears of pure shock. Caleb? What? This has to be a mistake. Maya, tell him this is some kind of sick joke, Martha whispered, her voice trembling. Maya didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She turned on me, her eyes burning with a sudden, vicious hatred that was more honest than anything she'd said in years. You spied on me? You hired someone to follow me? You're pathetic. You're so insecure and jealous that you had to ruin a family dinner just to feel powerful? Are you jealous, Caleb? She spat, her voice echoing in the dining room, sharp enough to cut. Is that what this is? You're so small that you can't handle a woman who wants more than this boring, predictable life in the suburbs? I looked at her, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no longing, no pain. Just the profound relief of a man who had finally stepped out of a burning building. No, Maya, I said, my voice steady and clear, reaching every corner of the room. I'm not jealous. I'm just done with you. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the Sterling merger. And I'm done with funding a life for a woman who doesn't exist. I turned to Bill and Martha, who were staring at their daughter as if she were a stranger. I'm sorry you had to see this, but I won't have my name dragged through the mud. The car is packed. My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow morning. The house is being listed on Monday. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in Caleb's story and share your thoughts in the comments. I didn't wait for the fallout. I didn't stay to hear her excuses or the inevitable explosion from her father. I walked out the front door of our Oak Creek home and didn't look back. I had a suite booked at the Drake in Chicago, overlooking the lake. As I drove down the I-290, when the city skyline twinkling in the distance, I realized that the house I was leaving wasn't a home. It was a prison I'd been paying for with my soul. Maya tried to call me 42 times that night. She sent texts ranging from, "I'm so sorry, let's talk," to "I'll take you for every penny you have." I blocked her number after the third hour. She even tried to send Julian to talk to me at my office the next day. My security team, briefed and ready, escorted him out of the lobby before he even reached the elevators. The divorce was swift and brutal. Because of the evidence of financial malfeasance, the way she had tried to divert joint funds into her California project while still married, The judge was not lenient. The prenuptial agreement held like a fortress. She lost the house, she lost the investment accounts, and because Julian's firm found out about the corporate alias apartment through the discovery process, she was terminated for a violation of ethics. Julian, predictably, didn't stick around for the struggle. Once the money was gone and the Project California dream turned into a legal nightmare, he vanished. He transferred to a firm in London, leaving Maya to face the wreckage of her own making in a small rental unit she could barely afford. 6 months later, I was standing on a balcony overlooking the Pacific, but not in Malibu. I was in a small, rugged town in Oregon, working on a community library project that actually meant something. I had lost a decade to a lie, but I had gained the rest of my life. I heard through mutual friends that Maya was living in a small apartment in Cicero, working a mid-level admin job. She had reached out to her parents multiple times, but Bill, a man of fierce integrity, hadn't spoken to her since that night at all the dining table. He sent me a Christmas card that year. It just said, "I'm sorry for what she did to you, son." I learned that jealousy is a word used by people who want to keep you in a cage of their own design. They want you to believe that your intuition is a flaw and your boundaries are an insult to their freedom. But when you finally stop caring about the lies, the cage simply disappears. I'm not the man I was in Oak Creek. I'm stronger, quieter, and far more discerning. I realize now that the revenge wasn't the legal win or the financial settlement. It was the moment I looked at her and realized she no longer had the power to make me feel anything at all. So thank you for joining us for this journey on family secrets and revenge. This story is a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't a grand gesture. It's simply choosing yourself and walking away into the light. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the truth, and share your overall thoughts based on Caleb's story in the comments below. We read every single one, and we appreciate you being part of our community. We'll see you in the next one.